Everybody, the French President Emmanuel Macron has spent the afternoon at Sandhurst Military Academy with the British Prime Minister Theresa May. This following his visit to Calais on Tuesday and the proposed idea that we put some more money into the Le Touquet agreement. Let's remind ourselves, for about 10 years, just a little bit more, there's been a French border in Folkestone and Dover, and there's been a British border on the other side at Calais. Nothing to do with the European Union whatsoever. It's a bilateral agreement between two countries. It was designed to deal with illegal immigration. As the years have gone on, increasingly, I think perhaps security has been seen to be its top priority. And it's very much something that the ferry companies, the train companies, etc., wanted to happen. David Cameron told us in the referendum, if we left the European Union, the agreement would fall. That clearly isn't the case. However, it does seem to me that the French president is extracting quite a big price from us. Bear in mind, over the last 3 years, we put over £120 million into the complex at Calais, new fencing, new security, and the deal being talked about today is that we put in a further £45 million, and that's to stop illegal migrants from entering Britain. And when I heard the news this morning, it said it was going to be agreed that the 45 million would be there to stop illegal migrants entering Britain, but at the same time, Britain would take in more of the migrants. I thought perhaps I'd misheard it. You know how sometimes the radio's on, but your mind's half somewhere else? I kind of assumed that I got it wrong in my head. But no, actually, we're going to pay 45 million to stop migrants coming in, but we're also going to take migrants, in particular child migrants, or families that have children, or pretty much anyone that can prove, it seems to me, they've got a family connection in the United Kingdom. And I do wonder, why on earth would we pay all this much more money if we were to allow more people to come in? Doesn't that just encourage more people to come to Calais? Anyway, let's hear the Prime Minister in a press conference that took place about half an hour ago justifying this deal.
What we are doing is working with the French authorities and providing support to ensure that we enhance the security of our border. This is in our national interests. I think it's also in the interests of France to ensure that we have as secure a border as possible at Calais and other ports. So this is about ensuring that we protect our national interests and ensure we have that much more secure border. But as you've heard, there is a question, and this is an issue that when I was Home Secretary I discussed with the former Interior Minister about the unaccompanied minors. We have, over time, taken a number of those unaccompanied minors. We need to ensure that for those who have family reunification in the UK, the process is as smooth as possible to recognise that. And that's what we have agreed, some new ways of working together. But we've also agreed to look at how we can provide support to France in ensuring that we reduce the numbers of migrants trying to come through to Calais and through to the UK.
Well, she's right. We have taken about 750 child migrants since 2016, and I'm sure some of them were children in, genuine, perhaps even desperate need. But a lot of them, do you remember the pictures? Look like 33-year-old prop forwards with full stubble. I mean, clearly people who've thrown away their passports can claim to be whatever age they want. I felt that system had been abused. And, of course, one of them, without going into any details, but one of that number attempted a heinous terrorist act on a London transport system. That's still about to go to court. Now, Emmanuel Macron responded by going a little bit beyond today's deal and perhaps looking a bit to the future.
Sometimes have different views, but we always agree when it comes to these topics. This is the reason why we can work together, and this is the reason why I've been so determined in my remarks regarding foreign policy and defence. So it is for us to make sure that there are no changes in this respect, because we are stronger together.
Stronger together. Well, I think the Le Touquet agreement is going to stay in place. That's pretty clear. We're picking up the tab for it, but it is going to stay in place. But sort of the implication there that really we shouldn't really be leaving the European Union. And that's been the line I've had in Strasbourg all week. We've heard it from Tusk and from Juncker and from the Irish Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar. The line is, come on, chaps, you've made a bit of a mistake. Just get your parliament to get into line with us. We'll have a second vote and sort the whole thing out. how do I really feel about this? Well, look, as I said, dealing with illegal immigration is clearly a huge problem. One of the difficulties that we've had over the years is that if you are found to be in this country illegally, your chances of being deported are only about 1 in 4. So you can perhaps see why people would chance it. But I'm not sure the French have behaved very well over all of this. I mean, look, under the rules of refugee status, and I'm talking about rules set out in the Geneva Convention back in 1951, you claim refugee status in the first safe country you come to. And a lot of people say they've tried to claim asylum in France and simply been refused and finish up at Calais, and you do get the impression that actually some of the French authorities are quite happy for people to jump onto the back of lorries. But now we're dealing with something even bigger, and that is we're living in an age of potential international terrorism. I drove my car this morning through Calais on Eurotunnel, going to Folkestone. Let me tell you, it's a completely different experience to that it was 3 years ago. I remember 3 years ago being stuck, queuing to get into Eurotunnel, groups of migrants all round the car, trying to open the doors to get in. I mean, even as somebody with a car, it was a bit scary, let alone the plight of many lorry drivers. There has been a huge amount of fencing put around those complexes. We did see migrants today on the side of the road, but they were a good, I'd say, mile and a half away. Certainly from Eurotunnel. I can't speak for the ferry port. And then, when I got in, I was stopped. Everybody was stopped, actually. And there was a French team, a French woman, a sort of border force, who in sort of Pink Panther French said she was looking for explosives. And yeah, the car was all, this thing was scanned all over the steering wheel, and the boot was opened up, and the back door was opened up, and we were allowed through. And then our passports were all scanned and checked. I mean, you do actually get the feeling now, at both sides, that genuine checks are taking place. Good is all I can say. And increased time at borders is nothing to do with us leaving the European Union. This is happening all over the world because of the threat of terrorism. So do I mind us spending a bit more money to make our country a bit safer, to stop people with guns or explosives getting in? No, I don't, actually. But why is it that we're picking up all of the tab and at the same time are going to allow another wave of migrants into Britain? That strikes me not as being a deal, Mrs. May. It strikes me as being a capitulation verging on humiliation. And if this is how well she does negotiating with the French president, God help us when it comes to this trade deal that we're going to start negotiating in March. She clearly isn't very good at it. Is it worth it, folks? Let me know what you think on 0345 6060 973. You can text to 84850. You can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. You can watch us live on Facebook and comment there too. And we're going to Sevenoaks to speak to Craig, a new caller to the show. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening, Nigel.
So tell me, Craig, do you think our Prime Minister has got a good deal today?
I think she's been smoking drugs, personally.
Well, do you know what? There are many, many things we could accuse the Prime Minister of. I have to say, I think smoking drugs is quite low on the list.
Well, possibly, but she's been doing something. She's clearly got no idea of negotiating anything at all. Clearly. How can she agree to take more migrants and pay a bill? You either do one or the other, not both.
Craig, as I say, when I heard the radio news this morning, I thought I'd misheard it. I assumed we were paying the money to stop people coming, not paying the money and taking more people.
Or review why they're coming here. If they're coming here to get housing and benefits and all that, great. Okay, that's fine. If that's why they're doing it,
well,
stop them. Stop providing housing and benefits for them.
Well, they're going to get, Craig, they're going to get housing and benefits if they are accepted in this country as refugees. They won't get housing and benefits if they come in illegally and disappear and work in the black market and all the rest of it. But either way, we want proper border controls, and we do.
Absolutely, we want to be secure, and we haven't been for decades, and it's embarrassing, really. But
So do you rather agree with me that if this is the best deal she can get, or say deal, capitulation, to the French, it doesn't bode that well for the EU renegotiation, does it?
She's going to get slaughtered.
Going to get slaughtered.
Absolutely slaughtered in the renegotiation.
Oh dear, oh dear.
David is not much better.
Craig,
she's going to get absolutely slaughtered.
I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong, Craig. I really hope you're wrong, but I thank you. I'm going to ask Michael, who's calling from Oldham. Good evening, Michael.
Good evening. It's interesting that you seem to be complaining about the 45 million that we're paying to keep our border safe, but then also we're taking on migrants. And I will agree with you. It seems like it's a very strange thing that she's negotiated.
Yes.
Like having two different types of things. Mm-hmm. But what would you have us do? What would you do if you were in her shoes? Okay. This negotiating.
Do you know what, Michael? I do actually think, because there are more illegals that want to come into the United Kingdom than there are illegals who want to leave the United Kingdom and go to France. And for that reason, I think the Le Touquet deal has been useful. Certainly the numbers of people caught attempting illegally to get into Britain has fallen from 80,000 a year to 30,000 a year. And that indicates to me, Michael, that spending some money on this is a good thing. I'm a little bit concerned that we're picking up all the tab, but I'm not fundamentally, Michael, objecting to spending money to make Britain safer. What I would do different is to say that if people are going to claim refugee status, they do so in the first safe country they come to. And my fear, Michael, with another wave of child migrants, is many of them won't be children, and all this will do is play into the hands of the traffickers and mean more people finish up living in abysmal conditions in Calais.
Well, one thing that's interesting is and this is something that I've experienced twice before, because I've lived abroad. I've lived in the Middle East and I've lived in Norway for a short time as well. And when I went in, they counted me in and they counted me out when I left.
Yep.
We still don't do that in this country, and I don't understand why. Like, everybody's talking about immigration, and we still don't do it.
Well, I think we're beginning to do it, Michael, aren't we? As I said, my passport today was scanned. I was scanned out. I was scanned in. It is beginning to happen. Michael, we've got better at it, but we've got further to go. And I thank you very much for your call. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:15. So Macron gets more money and May gets more migrants. That kind of is my assessment of the so-called deal that has been done today. Sean says to me on Twitter, Macron has played the part of dodgy plumber today. Here's the price for your leaking pipe. I've part fixed it, but there's still water going to be coming into your home. That's pretty good, Sean. I like that. Sam in Worthing says, it's a great deal. 700 migrants for a secure border. Give me a break. What are you whining about? Well, Sam, what I'm whining about is it was 700 migrants, 750 since 2016. It'll be another 500 or 700 now. And next year, Sam, we'll be having the same conversation, because all an act like this does is to encourage yet more people to come. And Ronnie's on the money on Facebook. He says, Nigel, surely you're fully aware that these migrants go into France because they're in Schengen, and yet the French have the audacity to pass them on. You're quite right. So Schengen means that you land in Greece, you land in Italy, you cross border free into France, and the French have got no idea who's coming into their country. They see a problem at Calais and they're quite happy, frankly, to shunt much of that problem on. And whilst I do think Le Touquet's a good deal, I don't mind paying a few bob for us to be safer. I think, frankly, they are taking the mickey a bit. But perhaps I've been unfair. Perhaps I really have thus far been unfair, because there's a sweetener. Oh, yes. Mr. Macron, President Macron has said that as a result of all of this, the bio tapestry can go on a tour around the United Kingdom. Now, is this a good idea? Already, it's been cartooned and lampooned as the Buy EU tapestry. Is it a good idea to take something that is 950 years old and to attempt to move it to several locations in the United Kingdom? I would have thought, from an historical perspective, there would be really quite a big risk with doing that. I've been to see the Bayeux Tapestry. It's in Bayeux, not surprisingly, which is one town in Normandy that wasn't flattened in World War II. The RAF left Bayer alone. Caen was completely flattened and is now a 60s tower block city. Bayer is beautiful. It is also the home of the biggest Commonwealth War Graves Cemetery in Normandy, a very moving, powerful place to go. So Bayer is this delightful medieval town. I've been, the town's great, the British Cemetery is fascinating, and the Bayer Tapestry is great. It's an amazing story. It's a story, basically, that Harold said he wouldn't take the crown of England, he'd give it to William. Then he changed his mind, and William the Bastard, as he was known, then invaded. And poor old Harold was up in Yorkshire. He was fighting the Battle of Stamford Bridge against the Vikings and had to march. He won it, marched his troops all the way south, and not surprisingly, lost. The tapestry is a great, great thing to visit, wonderful thing to see, but we don't need it to come to this country. Reading has a perfect replica of it, if any of you want to go and see what the Bayer Tapestry looks like. And frankly, it's all a bit cheap, isn't it, really? I mean, you know, he's having us over, legging us over, and this is the best he offers in return. And Mikey says, having the Bayer Tapestry in the UK is an insult, and I'm sorry for every British soldier who wasted their lives for France in the 20th century. Mikey, can't agree with that. We may have our ups and downs with the French, but hey, they've been a free people, and they wouldn't have been if it hadn't been for us, but perhaps more importantly, the Americans, whose contribution was simply huge. Lee says, what about our own? They're the ones that need help and should be tackled with first. Lee, a lot of people do feel like this. Dave picks up on my theme of child migrants. He's having a laugh, he says, about the French president. I don't mind us taking children of 7 or 8 years old, not men with beards who are 30 plus. And we did see a bit of that last time round. Kevin is calling from Southsea. Kevin, tell me I've got it wrong. Tell me the Prime Minister is doing all the right things.
Good evening, Nigel. No, she's not.
Right.
She's just handing everything away. I'm sorry. I actually listened to the 6 o'clock news on the Today programme this morning.
Yes.
Boy, did I wake up quick. I was hopping mad when I heard that. Just a quick pointer. Yeah, there are lots of tower blocks in Caen. Actually, I'm actually the vice chairman of the Ports of Caen Twinning Committee, part of the City Council. And
okay, I've got the right chap on, man.
Oh, yeah. I'm doing all sorts of twinning with fire service and everything else. That's an aside. But it does prove the point. I'm also a local UKIP chairman. It does prove the point that when people start accusing me of racism and xenophobia, you know what I mean? Saying, well, no, because I speak the language. I'm out there fostering links. But no, Mrs. May is selling this country down the river, and to suggest that we're going to pay 44 million quid on top of the 40 odd billion that we have apparently promised, just so we can move on to the next stage of the talks. Yeah. Mr. Barnier was saying, "Hurry up, the clock's ticking," and then he postpones it for 3 months.
I know that Kevin, I found unbelievable. Also, fair to point out that the EU has its own fund to deal with the migration crisis, of which, of course, we're a contributor to as well. I mean, Kevin, I'm interested to hear what you say about the sellout. I mean, Glyn says to me on Twitter, Glyn's from Swansea, he says, with reference to Macron and May, this is the beginning of the great Brexit sellout. There is treachery afoot, says Glyn. Would you agree with that, Kevin, or is he going too far?
No, absolutely not at all. Go back to the whole history of the referendum. I was sitting up in the Guildhall watching the telly until the vote had to be yes to get out. Where I went to bed a very happy teddy bear, as you can well imagine. I've read your book with Aaron Banks. I know exactly what you guys are up to, and you look like you're having a jolly good time too.
Well, there's no point doing it unless it's fun, Kevin. I mean, it's important. It was important, but we had a bit of a laugh on the way.
Absolutely not. Oh yeah, too right. But ever since then, it's been delay and obfuscation. Cameron said, if you decide to leave, the letter will be in the post the following morning. Well, yeah, it was. That was his resignation. May got voted in.
I know.
Voted in. Everyone fell out.
I know. It is. Kevin, it is painful, but I'm going to stop you there because this is not directly a Brexit debate. And actually, what's interesting is Cameron tried to link this Le Touquet deal with EU membership. And what you've seen today, even though Macron thinks we shouldn't be going is actually this deal is a standalone deal between two countries. It has suited us in many ways, but boy, we're paying a big price. Kevin, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Aaron is calling from Sevenoaks, another Sevenoaks caller. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. What May should have done is said to Macron, yeah, we'll give you the 45 million. That's no problem at all.
Okay.
But you've got to match it pound for pound by spending and securing your southern borders. And once we see that you've got the commitment, because that's where the problem is. The problem is the Schengen. We all know, we've just been speaking about it. It's the Schengen Agreement. How many people know that the Schengen Agreement has actually been incorporated into EU law by the Amsterdam Agreement of 1988?
Yep.
So because it's been incorporated into EU law, if there is another referendum and this is overturned, there is nothing we can do. We will be forced to adopt the Schengen Agreement, and we will be in a situation where we will be able to do nothing about it.
Yeah, I mean, the only advantage we would have if that worst-case scenario came to pass is that we are an island and we have every right to protect our security, and I just do not see... do you know what? Politically, I think, Aaron, it would be impossible for a UK government to say, do you know what? We've stopped checking passports. I just don't believe it to be possible. But, Aaron, again, you sound pretty angry about what's happening here.
Well, I think it's the British taxpayer having to fork out and pay for problems that are not that don't emanate from the UK.
Yeah.
You know, this is an agreement that by the European Union. The Hungarians pay no attention to this at all.
Oh, they've got fences everywhere. I know they have. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the Serbians, and so you've got country and Poland also. I mean, that's why there is a wave, an anti-European wave sweeping through Europe at the moment. I mean, I've got family in Italy, and you are quite right when you say that there is such a high percentage of under 40s that want out of the European Union.
Across the rest of Europe, yep, and that's not quite the case here. Aaron, I thank you. Anne says to me, Nigel, offering the tapestry is an attempt to humiliate the English, considering the circumstances it was made under. Macron has a cheek. Well, Anne, there is speculation that actually the bio tapestry, and by the way, it's not a tapestry, it's an embroidery. There you go. I didn't know that before this morning, I have to confess. The difference is that one is an interweave, and the other is actually stitched on. There is big speculation that it may well have been made in Kent, but under Norman instruction and possibly from William's brother. But Anne, you're wrong. At the time, in 1066, Normandy was not part of France, and the Normans weren't French. They were the Northmen. They were the Norsemen. They were basically Vikings that had settled and colonised Normandy, as they had much of the United Kingdom too. They were really rather good at it. So Anne, let's get that historical fact right. 1066 was not a takeover of France. It was a takeover of the Northmen, the Normans. That, historically, I believe to be right and correct. But if I'm wrong, I know that Facebook and Twitter will go mad and do so very quickly indeed. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on OBC. It's 7:30. We're updating the Le Touquet Treaty, the bilateral deal that exists between us and the French. And the way it's kind of worked out is that Macron's got the money and May's got the migrants. But it's okay, because the bio tapestry might come to the UK and we can see it. Well, actually, there's a perfectly good copy in Reading anyway. And if anybody is interested in history, I tell you what, hop over on a ferry, go to Normandy, see the Bayeux Tapestry in Bayeux. It is fabulous. Great experience and well worth doing. And what's interesting is I wonder whether the Prime Minister realises just how desperately out of touch with the country she is on this. Because I can't find anyone telling me that she's done the right thing today. And LBC is about open, free, democratic debate. Anybody with any opinion. Gosh, we had Alistair Campbell for an hour last Sunday with us, just to rather prove the point. So please, tell me that I've got this wrong. Tell me that it is the right thing to do on both sides of this deal. And you can do it by calling 0345 6060 973. Now, in Washington last night, Donald Trump announced the Fake News Award, something that he'd been talking about for some weeks, and there is a top 10 of these fake news items. One is from the New York Times, is Paul Krugman, who claimed on the day of Trump's victory that the economy would never recover and the stock market would collapse. It's up a staggering 30%. There's also one where the Washington Post, according to McDonald, falsely reported the president's massive sold-out rally in Pensacola, Florida. They said it was empty because a dishonest reporter showed a picture of the empty arena hours before the crowd started pouring in. And CNN, of course, CNN had to be up there somewhere. CNN falsely reporting that Donald Trump and his son Donald Jr. had access to hacked documents from WikiLeaks. And that, of course, is where I fit into all of this, because apparently the fact that I went to meet Julian Assange means that I'm the bagman, running stuff back and forth between the White House and Assange. It's all hooey, I promise you. So anyway, and there's many, many more. I was looking through the fake news awards and I was a bit surprised. I thought the BBC might feature somewhere, because Trump does not like the BBC one little bit. In fact, when John Sopel introduced himself at a White House press conference, he said, "Which organisation are you from?" And Sopel said, "I'm the BBC's North America correspondent." And the president said, "Oh, that's another beauty, isn't it?" So he doesn't like the BBC. But it was interesting in the wake of these, talking about John Sopel, who's been over in America for a couple of years and is living and breathing the presidency and what's going on. He said a very interesting thing. It's partly to do with the fact that Hillary and the Democrats were so totally stunned by what happened on November the 8th, 2016, that they literally haven't managed to regroup, frankly, in any way at all. And Sopel made the point that actually these big organisations, the New York Times, CNN, the Washington Post, far from being impartial reporters of news, but with an editorial opinion, have actually become the opposition. They are actually the opposition to Trump, and that is why you've got this incredible kind of war going on between mainstream media and the president. Because there is an irony, of course, to all of this, that when Trump talks about the failing New York Times and how badly all these organisations are doing, they're all booming. Trump is the best thing that has ever happened to global media, because every single day, in virtually every single country in the world, whatever he's put out on Twitter is what they're talking about. And CNN subscriptions are up, New York Times subscriptions are up, and from what I can hear, journalists in Washington have all had quite good Christmas bonuses and pay rises. So they may be at war with him on one level, but on another, I think they're perhaps actually rather grateful to him. So this deal, 45 million quid to stop migrants coming in, yet we're going to accept more. I think it's a very weak, poor deal. I do support the L2K agreement. I don't mind paying money to make Britain safer, but we can't lose on both sides of this bargain, can we? John is a new caller from Hove. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Nigel, and thanks for enlightening us all. I shall now call it the bio-embroidery. Moving forward, that's what I'll refer to it. Do. I have to agree with you on the 45 million. Yes, we have to pay it. If the roles were reversed, we would insist. I would expect them to pay it if we had migrants trying to crash over there, and that's although that.
All right, John.
Paying for is Britain.
John, that's interesting. John, that's really interesting. So are you saying that if just down the road from you in Folkestone there was a big camp of illegal immigrants looking to stow away on lorries to get into France, and we asked the French for another 50 million, do you think they'd pay it?
I don't know if they would, but we should. We'd have every right to insist that they did.
Okay.
And if they didn't, I'd probably just let the people in the camp run across the border.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
So I do agree with you on that. As far as the children discussion, I don't think we should link the two. I don't necessarily disagree with your opinion, but I don't think the two should be linked.
Right.
But I do also have to agree that Theresa May is spineless, and even dealing with your good friend Mr. Trump.
Yeah. But John, how can we not link the two? How can we not link the two?
We shouldn't link the two because they really are two separate discussions. They really, really are. It shouldn't be an and. We should just pay because the alternative, if we don't pay the 45 million to 45, then they can just not do what they're supposed to and make things even more difficult and let even more people run across.
Yeah, but John, also the 45 million, it isn't just about that, is it? It is now, as I say, about my car being swabbed down today, testing for explosives. And actually, I tell you what, John, I'm actually pretty impressed now. I regularly go through Eurotunnel. I've been going through it regularly.
I did a couple of weeks ago, and I 100% agree with you. It's exactly. I felt safer, and they're doing what it's.
I mean, it takes a bit more time. It takes a bit more time, but hey, going through the airport now takes a bit more time. That's just the world we're living in, isn't it? But John, I'm very keen to get your opinion on the child migrants issue because there is clearly an emotive argument that if there are single children, on their own in Calais in dire circumstances, that there is clearly something in every human being that says they want to help. But don't we have this feeling, John, that that's been rather abused?
It absolutely has been abused. But again, if she had some spine, she should say to him, look, I am going to pay the 45 million, but I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to let you link the two discussions. Even if it's to come back next week, even in 2 days' time, but I'm not going to link the two discussions. And then we have that separate discussion. Yeah,
John, in some ways, your argument has a logic to it, but in reality, it was never going to be possible to separate these two, was it?
Well, she's too spineless, and if I could, I know that's not why I called him, but what you were talking.
Yeah.
You didn't mention his own fake news of tweeting of sharing Britain First news, which was proved to be fake, and I know he's your friend and everything, but friends can disagree, and he was so in the wrong to do that.
Well, John, separate conversation. He retweeted somebody called Ann Coulter, who's a very well-known American commentator. He's got 37.5 million followers on Twitter. He only follows 43, I think it is, and he retweeted her. John, that conversation for another time. Your first call into the show. Great points you've made. Please do call again. Martin from Rotherhithe says, why don't France just get a grant from the EU to pay for it? Well, actually, Martin, they could get some money from the EU to deal with migrant camps, etc. But remember, Martin, this deal, this Le Touquet deal, is nothing to do with the European Union. Whatever Call Me Dave Cameron said during the referendum, this is an agreement between Britain and France that actually has pretty much suited both sides. And I certainly this morning, coming through, felt a lot safer than I had 2 or 3 years ago making that journey. Chris is calling from Luton. Good evening, Chris.
Hi, Nigel. I think we have a moral obligation to pay the money and also to let vulnerable young people particularly in.
Okay.
Prior to going into wars in the Middle East and destabilising things, this was one of the things on the agenda, saying, look, if we do this, there's going to be chaos. People are going to want to come here and so forth. Now it's happened. They were warned about it, and now this is happening, and we can't just turn our back on it. And also, as you know, if the French do withdraw their goodwill, or call it what you like, in terms of, stopping people coming here, there will be chaos. There will be no checks and balances.
Okay,
they
Chris,
walk away.
Chris, you have a very, very fair point. It was actually Gaddafi who said, if you remove me, you'll get millions of migrants crossing the Mediterranean. Gaddafi actually said that. And by the way, folks, before you start tweeting, and I'm not a Gaddafi supporter, but he did actually say that. So we have destabilised things, and I understand that point. But Chris, shouldn't people who are, whatever their age, who are applying for refugee status, shouldn't we respect international law that's been there for many, many decades and the principle that you claim asylum in the first safe country you come to?
Well, obviously there's complications there, and the French probably aren't bending over backwards, or other countries necessarily that they come through. But, they weren't necessarily the countries that went in and destabilised the countries we're talking about. Not all of them. We know that they come from subcontinent Sahara and so forth. But, as you say, in Libya particularly, where people probably would have stopped and worked and maybe gone back, Now we have a situation...
And it's become lawless, Chris. I mean, Libya's become lawless, and it's the traffickers. These people are moving across the Mediterranean, and it's the traffickers that are doing it. Chris, you say we have a moral obligation. I do understand the point you're making. How broad and wide should that moral obligation be? Should it be a few hundred this year, a few hundred next year, a few hundred every year? I mean, just how far, Chris, do you think the British government ought to take this moral obligation?
We know that we haven't taken, really as many as other countries. We were, again, keep sort of repeating myself, at the forefront of talking about, bringing democracy to countries and so forth. And now we have to pick up the consequences of that. We can turn around and go, oh, well. And Nigel, I've got to say one thing about the sort of dehumanising way that the people are spoken about. Migrants laughing about people. These are people that are in serious doo-doo.
Oh, Chris, many of them are in serious doo-doo. And, of course, thousands have drowned crossing the Mediterranean. And I do understand what you're saying. We have a long tradition in this country of helping those in need. I'd like to see us stop people drowning crossing the Mediterranean. Chris, I thank you for your call and putting very eloquently and passionately the other point of view. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on RBC. It's 7:47. So we might get the chance to see the original Bio tapestry because President Macron may bring it across to the United Kingdom. I hope they don't charge us an entry fee, because we'll have paid it already, won't we? The 45 million extra that we're giving to build more security at Calais, and that's to stop migrants getting to Britain, and yet, in the same deal, we're also going to accept more migrants from Calais. Doesn't make a great deal of sense to me. I think the Prime Minister has been weak on this. I really do. The other thing that was discussed, and we haven't really got full details of this yet, but defence was also discussed, because not only are we members of NATO, but we of course also have, the St Malo Treaty with France and a great degree of military cooperation there too. I would love to have been a fly on the wall when Emmanuel Macron talked about the development of the European Army, which he is Air Force and Navy, which he is so enthusiastic about. And so far, from what little I heard of Theresa May saying on this today, she seems to think that's a frightfully good idea. Well, I think, to be honest with you, if they do develop a full European army, we've got to be very careful. If we tie ourselves too closely to that, I think that poses a big threat to NATO. And that's something, one of these evenings, we will debate at length. I'm worried about that. I still think that NATO is where we should put our faith in terms of defence organisations. And if we get too close to a European army, we will threaten that relationship with the Americans. Lisa on Facebook says, Theresa May needs to go. She is not listening to the people who basically pay her wages. Pamela says, regarding the Bio tapestry, well, embroidery, as you say, we have a really good replica here. We don't need the original. It's there, folks. It's in Reading and in London, in Chiswell Street, in the old brewery site where Whitbread's Brewery used to be. There is also Operation Overlord, a D-Day tapestry stroke embroidery, which is of the same dimensions as the Bio tapestry. That's about 75 yards in length. So there are plenty of tapestry stroke embroideries to see in this country anyway. Be awful, wouldn't it, if something that was 950 years old and an amazing piece of work, which I loved going to see, I recommend if you get the chance that you do too, be terrible if it got damaged, wouldn't it? Being transported across the channel. Jamie says the French government should deploy more police to Calais. Jamie, over the years, I can tell you, French policing on the outside Calais has been pretty erratic. Linda says, giveaway is at it again. The NHS on its knees, and she's giving away another 45 million to a country that has an illegal migrant problem because it refuses to control its borders. Linda, it does refuse to control its borders because it believes in Schengen. Crackers, in my view. Lorraine is calling from Worcester Park. Lorraine, good evening.
Hello, Nigel. I'm a bit nervous.
Well, don't be nervous. Just imagine we're having a cup of tea or a glass of something stronger.
Okay.
So, I mean, tell me, do you feel that the Prime Minister has done the right thing or the wrong thing?
Oh, God, what has she done? She's just sold us out, hasn't she? She really has sold us out. She needs to go. She definitely needs to go. We've given her too many chances. She just needs to go.
Is it, Lorraine, is it that you just think she is a bit spineless, doesn't stand up for us? I mean,
Spineless. She's gutless. She's spineless. I can't even bear to look at the woman's face. She makes me sick. I just can't even bear to look at her. Who am I going to vote for? I can't vote for Conservatives. I can't vote Labour. I can't vote UKIP. Who do I vote for?
Oh, Lorraine. Well, that's a bigger debate. But I mean, now
that is, yeah.
Now, when you talk about Theresa May like that, I remember at the end of the Las Vegas debate when Hillary and Trump had been tearing chunks out of each other, and the interviewer said, "Can you please say one nice thing about each other?" Is there anything nice you can say about the Prime Minister, Lorraine?
No.
Nothing. Right.
No. Because she's had too many chances, Nigel. Too many chances. And she's how many lives has she got? How many lives has she got? I mean, you know.
Lorraine, I have to say, I think in many ways you are right. I don't think she's a leader.
Not at all.
She may be perfectly competent in a junior ministerial role. I don't see her as a prime minister. I don't see her as a leader. And I do think, Jeremy Hunt went in to the Cabinet Office to have his job changed, and 2 hours later he came out, he was still in the same job.
Well, that speaks volumes, doesn't it?
So if she can't even shuffle her own team around...
Well, there you are.
Yeah,
there you are.
yeah.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Lorraine, she's not up to it. Thank you for the call. Calm down as the evening goes on, otherwise you won't be able to sleep. But I do understand your upset and your anger. You're not the only person feeling it. And our last caller this evening is Andrew. We've had a lot tonight, new caller to the show, and he's calling from Stoke. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening, Nigel. Nice to speak with you, first-time caller to your show.
You're very, very welcome.
Well, my day starts off with a real shock, because when I woke up and turned on breakfast television, your friends at Good Morning Britain had first reported the number as 45 billion.
Billion? Oh, had they really?
And I thought the world had gone mad. They soon corrected it.
I bet Piers Morgan won't tweet about that too much. Right, okay. So once you've recovered from that...
Yes. Well, I think we know what's been said today in terms of the deal, the 45 million and the refugees. But I think perhaps what's important is what's not being said. So obviously Merkel and Macron are very important figures in Europe. They hold a lot of power.
Yes.
So how much of this is making sure that they're on side and they can give us a good deal on trade, goods and financial services?
Do you know, that was what we debated on Monday night on this show. You know, is it worth conceding if it means getting a better Brexit deal? It was very interesting, and Ian Dale on before me made the point that in her press conference, May didn't even mention Brexit, which seems pretty extraordinary, Andrew. The line from the European Union, the line from Monsieur Barnier, who I met again this week, but the line is that they will negotiate as 27 and not individually on a bilateral basis. Now, clearly that can't absolutely be right. But Macron, we just got a hint there, Andrew, didn't we? That Macron said it would have been better kind of if we'd all stayed together. And that's what they're all saying this week. Andrew, we've learnt nothing today about whether making these concessions will give us a better Brexit deal or not. What does your sense tell you?
I think we need to give Theresa May a fair chance and see, because there's a lot of things behind closed doors that we're not seeing. She can't say. And
I tell you what, Andrew. I tell you what. Over the course of the next few months, we will find out. I thank you for your call, the last call of the evening. I'm going to be back here on Sunday morning. It's the 21st on Sunday. It's 1 year since I was there at the inauguration, and we will talk Trump 1 year on, success or failure, fake news or not. Coming up tonight at 10 o'clock, it's Ian Collins, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you very much.